and a really warm welcome back to my channel, PumpkinBecki. It's the 2nd of April. It's been a fairly soggy Easter weekend so far, but the sun is just peeking out from behind the clouds, so hopefully it's going to cheer up very soon. This week we're looking at my carnivorous plant collection. I keep several sorts of carnivorous plants here and I keep them in the greenhouse all year round. The first one that you're probably all really familiar with is the Venus flytrap, or Dionia. It looks a bit small and pathetic right at this moment, but that's because it's in its winter dormancy. These leaves just help it keep going, keep photosynthesizing what little light there is, but it's not trying to trap insects for food, it's not actively trying to grow, so they are very small little traps that they're really not going to catch anything at all. That will change shortly. I also keep lots of Drosera, which are sundew. Now there are some native sundews to the UK. This is Capensis alba. If I show you that close up, you'll just see it's putting up some really lovely new young plants, and we have dew already. I also have Sarracenia, which are also commonly known as pitcher plants. Some are small and stay low to the ground, others are tall and majestic, and you will often find them in garden centres. I found this particular one, it wasn't labelled any further than Sarracenia, which isn't desperately helpful, but last year it grew beautifully, and I'm going to insert a picture here for you. So I'm fairly sure it is one of the rubras. It's got its sort of non-carnivorous winter leaves here, which again are just keeping it going over winter, and also right there is a flower bud. In the wild, carnivorous plants will multiply by seed and also via their root system. Sarracenia are actually really clever, and they don't flower and produce carnivorous pitchers at the same time. That's because they don't want to go trapping their pollinators, because that would be daft. If you've ever seen a Sarracenia flower, it is quite spectacular. They are amazing. I was given a new Sarracenia last year in flower, and I've never seen anything quite like it. If you hop over to my blog, you'll see some photographs. I'll also insert some here. You'll find I do lots of blog posts about my carnivorous plants. I also post on Instagram and Facebook all about my carnivorous plants because they're just so incredible. I do get a bit upset when people say, "Oh, they're so horrible, they're so gross, how can you keep those?" They're not. They're incredible. They've developed over millennia to survive in peat bogs, really awful conditions that hardly anything else will grow in. They're a really important part of our ecosystem. I keep mine here in the greenhouse for two reasons. One, I want to look at them because they're so amazing, and two, because they are such incredible natural pest control. They eat all the green fly, black fly, wasps, blue bottles and other sorts of housefly, mosquitoes, things that get into the greenhouse that you just don't want in here. The most exciting thing, and this is probably a bit gross, is in the winter to cut off one of the spent pitchers, slit it down the middle, open it up, and you will see all the carcasses of the things that have been eaten by your pitcher plant, and you will be amazed at what it is called. Drosera are a lot more obvious when they catch their prey because the flies get stuck to the little globules of dew on the end of the hairs on the leaf, and then often the leaf will actually curl round and it will digest the carrion in that manner, and then when it's done it will unfurl again. One big rule with Dionia, or the Venus flytrap, is please don't just go and try and spring the traps for no reason. That is how they feed. If you are constantly making the traps trigger, and a trap can only close, open and close that once, that's its that's its life cycle. So when it's open, if a fly lands on, it has 4 trigger hairs, and the fly will crawl around and trigger all 4 hairs, and the trap will close and the fly will be caught. Once it's digested that fly, the trap will open up again and you'll see the carcass of it there, and that will encourage other things, other predators. There are some sorts of spider, other flies that feed on carrion will come along and try and feed from that carcass. Not that there's much left of it, I can be absolutely honest with you, and it will trigger the hairs and the trap will close again. That's what it's designed to do, and all that time it is absorbing nutrients from its prey. Now if you go around forcing it to close, it opens again because it realises there's no actual prey there, and you make it close again, that's now a dead trap. It has no way of obtaining nutrients for the plant, and it will die. And if you do that on all the traps, you're going to kill your plant because you're weakening it. It has no other way of feeding. Now if your carnivorous plant is getting off to a particularly slow start, then it is possible to feed it via the foliage, and I use these minute little pellets which are designed for tropical fish. They're sold for betta fish. That's betta, B-E-T-A, not betta fish. And the idea is that you grind them up, you grind the little pellets up, and you pop them into a little spritzer bottle, and you just spritz the foliage every week or so just to give it a little boost. I did that last year for a couple of my plants that were particularly sort of struggling to get going, and it definitely helped. It's not something I then continued throughout the year. It didn't need to. I had so many flies, and what I do actually with the greenhouse is I like to leave the door open. I have automatic vents in here, but I also like to leave the door open on particularly hot days, and it was hot last year. So I've got flies and wasps and goodness knows what going in and out all the time. So now let's talk about compost. I've been using this brand for several years, very successfully, but it is peat based. As we know, I'm trying to move away from peat. This is one of the only things I ever used peat in, and it's because that's a carnivorous plant's natural environment. So I felt slightly justified in using it, but not entirely justified. As you know, I've been using eCoco's products. This is not a paid for promotion. And I went back onto their website and I noticed they had actually got peat-free carnivorous plant compost. You can buy it in much bigger quantities, which is fantastic. I mean, one of these is like a £5, and this was 20, and it's 10 litres, whereas that's only 2 litres. So we're going to do some repotting. I've got most of my plants in plastic pots at the moment, and what I have found is roots don't tend to go down desperately far in the pots, and to get a big enough aperture at the top, I'm actually wasting, effectively, a lot of compost at the bottom because the roots are never getting down that far. So what I've done is I've gone and bought some much shallower terracotta pots from the garden centre, but they've got a nice wide top. And you can see I've gone for 2 sizes. And these were a bargain. And this one's 69p and this one is £1.69. And the absolute golden rule for all carnivorous plants is to use rainwater or RODI water only. They can't tolerate the build-up of chlorine and other nutrients that are in tap water. It's no good. I actually had to go out and buy some distilled water last summer because it was so hot. We'd only just reinstalled our water butt in the garden, so I had no collected rainwater at all for them. I was leaving buckets out every time it did rain. I was just gathering as much rainwater as I could, and that was great, but when we hit July I had no rainwater left, and I had to actually go and buy a huge jerry can full of distilled water. It's distilled water, deionised water, and I can't remember what RO means. I'll put it on the screen. Anyway, reverse osmosis, there we go. So it is important that if you're going to have, whether it's just one plant or lots of plants, you need to find a way of gathering and saving rainwater. It's the absolute best, it's free, do that. So the first thing I'm going to do with the repotting process is empty my dry compost into a tub truck which has some rainwater in it, mix it up, get it all nice and damp. This is a lovely texture compost actually, it's very comparable to the peat version I was using. So I'm holding out lots of hope for this being a good alternative. So the first plant I'm going to be replanting is Drosera binata variety Dichotoma giant. It gets huge, up to 40 centimetres long. You can see where the main clump of plant is. You can just start to see new plants unfurling from the dormant buds, but you've also got quite a marked border around here where the soil has sunk a little and the rest of the plant has stayed raised up a bit. So I'm going to put my fingers around the outside to support the plant, upend it over my scrap bucket, and just carefully let the compost fall. You can see how wet it is. I've started watering again recently. You stop giving it too much water over winter. What I can do at this stage is actually split the clump up. But to be honest, it fits so beautifully in there, I'm not going to bother. You don't need to worry about drainage or screens. Fill in around the plant. Now, I'm not being as careful as I would be if I was doing this when there's more growth, because you will just get compost stuck to everything. I would use a spoon to feed the compost into these gaps. Most of my plants are either garden centre rejects that I've managed to buy really cheaply reduced, or they are from a specialist nursery called Triffid Nurseries, and they do some absolutely spectacular plants. They ship beautifully packed plants. You can buy seed from them as well. They are a great nursery to support. And you'll see I've actually done unboxing reviews on them on the blog. There we go, that's that one all potted up. And you saw when I took that out how shallow the roots were compared to the pot it was in. So this is going to be better because it's got room to spread sideways, but I'm not wasting lots and lots of empty pot. And I'm going to put the label back in. This next one is the giant that came to me in flower last year. As I say, it was a present from my best friend. It is called Sarracenia ruba subspecies Gulfensis Yellow River, and it's from Florida. So this is one of their named location Sarracenia. This is much easier to see the crown of the plant. You can see where the new flower buds are coming up. That's what these are, these bulbous ones. These are the non-carnivorous leaves that it popped up at the end of the year just to keep it going, and you can see where I've pruned back old foliage. So I'm going to try and do the same sort of thing, hand over the top but not squashing any of the growing points. That's going to be easier said than done with this one. And again, look at that, really shallow root system. Now I think this one we might actually be able to split, so let's do that. And you will get bits of crown that die off, and they tend to be the older crowns, and they'll get replaced by new ones or seeds and seedlings that come up in the compost. So, you know, don't despair. Last year I had a capensis that Capensis alba that had been going really strong. It was really happy, and I just couldn't get it out of dormancy. And I actually emailed the guys at Triffitt Nurseries and said, what am I going to do if I lost it? I sent them photographs, and they said, you probably have lost it, but keep your eye out for seedlings. So I did, and sure enough, it was gorgeous last year. These are really firm, but I've got some brown squelchy ones here. Yeah, that's gone. So I'm going to pull that off carefully, separate the roots out, but I'm not going to just dump it straight away because part of it might still be alive. And the easiest way of dividing these up is just to carefully pull. See where the different crowns are and just pull. And so long as you've got root and crown, that's a plant. Then what I'm going to do is add this one back in, but spaced apart. So I'm filling the bowl. Okay, so this one is a little bit of an unknown. There is definitely white root there. There's a chance I'm going to get something from this piece. So what I'm going to do is pop that in as well. It's got white roots, so that's a good sign. And even if that doesn't actually come up at all, there's a chance it will send up pieces from the root system. And then I stand my pots in trays of rainwater, and it's important to clean these out often, again with just pure rainwater, just give them a good scrub, because you will get algae and so on. So here's one that did really well last year. This is, I bought from actually Chessington Garden Centre. It is just labelled Sarracenia farnamii, but it did beautifully last year. So I'm going to transfer that into, I think, one of these slightly smaller pots. Again, see how that just crumbles away to reveal a really shallow root system. But nice, healthy, white roots coming out, lovely fibres. And we're just going to clear out some of this moss, not all of it. It does make a lovely little sort of microclimate, but it's nice to not have the entire pot covered up with mosses. We want carnivorous plants, not moss. So carefully, thumbs in between crowns and divide. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to leave them in one pot, but just divide it up to give them a little bit of extra room to grow and make my container look fuller. So again, just leave the crowns exposed, filled nicely round. This one here is Drosera filiformis, subspecies filiformis, so it's very fine indeed. You can see that the fronds are starting to unfurl, so I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful with this one. Though they haven't started to, there's a few dewed up over here. If your Drosera runs out of water in its pot and it starts to dry out the compost, you'll notice that the dew disappears from the leaves. You need to get that plant back in water ASAP. Tapping the pot is a good way of getting rid of excess compost from the top, but there is also something else you can do. I'm going to fit a rose onto my watering can full of rainwater. I'm going to make it rain just a bit, and you'll see how nice and clean those have come up. That's the standard form of capensis, where the hairs and even the dew have a pink tinge to them, and in the sunshine they will go even redder, as will most carnivorous plants will get their best colour in sunshine. Now there is a difference between dead and dormant. They've got lovely white roots on. I'm going to say that these are dormant buds, not dead buds. Don't panic and throw them away. Capensis is also very good at throwing up shoots from roots, so don't be too quick to discard a plant just looking at the top. Do make sure you unpot it and see what's going on underneath the soil surface. And the last one I'm going to pot up is this one, which was the one that I think is one of the rubra subspecies. Lots of healthy stuff going on there, lots of new non-carnivorous leaves forming, these little tiny BBs. Good. That looks like that's the old crown, but it's not rotten, so I'm going to leave it. Right, that's my carnivorous plant collection all potted up, ready for its new growing year. I hope you enjoyed that. It just goes to show what a diverse range of plants I do grow here. Please remember to rate, share and subscribe to me here on YouTube. And until next time, bye!